So hi everybody, welcome to day 2 of Digipub. Thank you for being here. Thank you for coming out again. Yesterday we had a very interesting panel discussion. It was my panel about ad formats, and during that panel I asked my guests to talk about the formats of the future in the context of web publishing, and among others, video advertising was flagged as one of the most promising format of the future. So now today we're lucky enough to get an entire panel and 30 minutes to talk just about video. Not just about video advertising, of course, we'll get to that. Monetization is the name of the game. But we'll also talk a little bit about the content itself, because there's so much of it today. So we'll talk about both parts. But before I begin, I'd like to remind everybody what the descriptor of this session is. It goes, has the early promise of video been realized? Have publishers exploited the promise and potential of video? So before I start asking questions, I'd like everyone to take 2 to 3 minutes each and answer this descriptor in yes, no, if that's easy enough. That's not very easy, but if you can, do a yes, no. And also, before we start talking about where web publishers are struggling when it comes to video and the monetization, all of that, also let's start on a slightly positive note and talk about, so far, what web publishers have got right when it comes to video. So we can start from that end, Ronish. Yeah. Yes, no, and what have they got right so far before we begin with the struggle stories?
I feel no is a strong word. I'll say we're not there yet.
Okay.
And I'll sort of focus on 3 main things. The first thing I'll talk about is scale. The web publishers in India have been obviously an early adopter of sort of leveraging video as a platform, and they've tried to sort of do it for the scale of this country. Now, there was an obvious opportunity there. I mean, for instance, if you look at it, back in 2014, the average amount of time a user spends or used to spend on his laptop or a mobile device was around 13 minutes. Which now in 2018 has grown 3x to around 46 minutes. And that's sort of in correlation to some of the slides that you saw from ComScore yesterday, in terms of the engagement users had. And 75% of all the mobile internet traffic today in India is video. So the opportunity is obviously there, and that's what the publishers have sort of tried to make use of. Having said that, moving on to the next part is essentially around user engagement, or are we doing enough in terms of engaging the audience, right? We all know that news consumption is like a core of an Indian, like we like consuming news. Earlier it used to be print, then we moved on to text, web, on the web, now video, right? But the reason I'm saying we're not there yet is when an OTT platform like Hotstar can actually provide a platform for Indians, like a crore of Indians, 10.3 million to be precise, to watch a cricket match. I think publishers are sort of staring at the tip of the iceberg. There is so much more that we can sort of do.
Okay.
And the third point, which is what most of us in the publishing industry want to talk about, is monetization, purely because you want like a sustained revenue stream for you to be able to do more, right? And I'll just focus on one key aspect, which is essentially fill rates, right? Now, if you leverage technology, the fill rate piece can actually go from like 50% or on the lower side, which is what you typically see for publishers, to actually 90% and above for extremely premium content like sports, which is what Sony Live did for India-South Africa series back in last December, and even the FIFA World Cup. So that's what I'm saying, like there is a lot of potential and a long road for us to go before we can say that we've leveraged it well enough.
Okay, thank you. Nishant?
I think, firstly, I'd like to differentiate that when we talk about publishers, we have the large publishers and the traditional publishers. But when we talk about video, every creator is also a publisher.
Okay.
So anyone like a TVF is a publisher, but at the same time, Carrie Minati is also a publisher because he's creating content, distributing across platform. So if I use the word collectively publisher, I think I'd say it's a strong yes that we are there. There's so much content being consumed, there's so much content being created. If as a publisher, again, I think Sandeep mentioned this point yesterday as well, that there are, for the larger companies it's slightly difficult because the investment is huge, they're looking for a larger return. But anyone who's starting today in terms of creating content, if they're not making money, they're doing something wrong.
Okay.
Let aside the CPM rates, the ad fill rates which you're getting from platforms like YouTube. As a content creator right now, if you're not making money, you're doing something wrong. That's what I feel.
Okay. Ramit, what about you? Is it a yes or no?
It certainly is no. I don't think publishers have realized, and I am saying medium to large publishers certainly haven't realized the dream of video. The point is well made. Anybody can make a video, and mobile phones have made sure that anybody in this room can make a video and you can put it up. And for a while, when we all started, we thought making the video was all it would take to scale video. I think what's happened in the last 1 or 2 or 3 years is that the scale models have begun to get more defined. So one model obviously is the OTT model, which is huge investments in licensing and sports and movies and what have you. And the other model is the original content model. There's a third model which publishers at scale and news publishers in particular are evolving. But the most critical part of that model is a business model, because video is expensive, particularly when you want to scale it, unlike many other forms of information. Video is hard work and video is investment. I think publishers have started making those investments. I think they're trying to play the scale game. I won't say it's been zero success, but I certainly think that what we thought was a clear path to the Holy Grail is clearer but more challenging than what we thought it was.
Okay, we'll discuss that in more detail once Preet has given her opening remarks.
So, I actually agree with Ramit to a large extent that I think this is our moment. This is the moment for creators, this is the moment for publishers, especially medium and small, or I think medium and small is the wrong word, sorry, it's regional and national at scale, to go in really heavy on content. However, the challenges remain that today I don't think anybody can sit back and say, we know exactly how we're going to make money out of the content investment that we are making, whether as a creator or as a publisher, because the larger revenue stream hasn't stabilized. It's not like one part of the universe hasn't stabilized, the larger universe hasn't stabilized as of now. And I think every publisher today is innovating, every publisher is pivoting on how they are engaging with the audiences, whether it's the variety of content, the languages, the subtitling, the file encryption. There is a long way to go, but I think this is the moment where you don't really need a market share percentage to define what's your tipping point to profitability. You could be a like one of the panelists said, you could be a very niche publisher of content, creator of content, and still be profitable.
Okay. Thank you for opening remarks. Now, before we get to monetization, the video advertising and all the formats therein and the innovation or lack therein, let's just take a moment and talk about how there is too much content out there, right? Because I do want everyone to comment on this. Is there any such thing? Because there's so much content on the internet with video. Every publisher wants to exploit video, and within that the cost of production is high, but you still want to do it. And I also want a comment from everybody on the type of content that people are going to watch in the future. Of course, it has a lot to do do with the sensibility of the platform. So Vice will create a certain type of content, and digital streams from HT will have a different type. But there is a general skew, and because of Netflix and a lot of the other OTT shows out there, there's this dark, intense sensibility that has come into the picture. So do comment on all three things: the inundation of content today on the web publishing front, the type of content that you think will be the future, and of course cost of production. Then we'll get to monetization. Is there some such thing as too much, and what type of content will fly? Chanpreet.
I completely disagree. I completely disagree. I don't think we've even scratched the surface, especially if we talk about web publishing. Let's just cut to, what we're talking about. Today, till about 2 years ago or till about a year ago on Google search, right, only 3% of search was outside of Hindi and English because the product wasn't ready. Our perception, published data, right? Does that mean that content on TV was only Hindi and English? No, right? We know there are 12 major languages in which content is being produced and is created. Today, how much of that content is easily accessible to users, easily discoverable for users across platforms? It's a question. Maybe Ramit is actually better placed to answer that question. And if you just answer that question, you'll realize there isn't enough content in depth in all these languages. We can't just have a filter of 1 or 2 languages and say, is there too much? That's one. Sorry, what was your second question?
The sensibilities, the kind of content that will
Okay, let me just take you back on 10 years back. Okay, what do you think comes on news channels? Seriously, this is a question to everybody. What is it that has made the biggest brands in news, in Hindi news, stand out? It's crime. It's crime and investigation. You're just actually putting really high value production behind it and telling those very stories. I don't think it's a new genre, it's just a genre that now people are it's viable to invest in it in the digital platform as well. So I think our sensibilities are as dark as they were earlier. We are there. And third was, cost of production.
Is that the real challenge? Before we get to monetization, that's still the next step. But if publishers just get cost of production under control, then the next step solves itself.
It is just about economies of scale in my perspective. Today, a lot of every platform, not just, we're talking about digital right now, 15 years ago we were talking about, oh my God, how is TV going to do it, right? And then how is radio going to do it? And look at what's happened in every industry, mini platform that has stabilized. It is about scale. Today, what is going on TV, can I use that content or that storyline on OTT? Everyone says the platform is different. Of course, it's vertical. Everyone's consuming vertical, right? But please look at all the consumption data. Everything is catch-up TV even now, right? And it is for publishers like us, like Vice, to break out and say, we are going to create content that is truly digital. But of course, then it will put a lot of cost pressures on us, right? Because there is no scale in that perspective. When you look at it as TV and OTT together, or TV and news together.
Absolutely, yeah. We don't have to go in this order. Ramit, you can, yeah.
There certainly is a lot of content. I don't know if there's too much. But even if you look at the data, just look at the largest sort of source for videos. Some people argue it's WhatsApp, but I would say the largest source for videos is YouTube. And even if you look at YouTube, my sense is not more than 5 to 10% of the videos on YouTube actually get monetized. And not every video is monetizable. And there are many reasons for that. Advertisers chase, and rightfully so, advertisers chase consumers, they chase context, they chase credibility, they chase engagement, they chase consistency, and they should. So there's lots of content, but over a period of time, a lot of that content is going to sort of find its way into into buckets that are monetizable and not monetizable. I think publishers, in particular news publishers, are sitting at a place where they can create both the platform and the content that's very highly monetizable. You're right, getting the investment in the ROI is a real key, and the content, because news publishers have also sort of been waylaid by the extreme forms of AIB video at one point a few years ago, the 4-second autoplays a couple of years ago, and the truth is that advertisers rejected that on our platforms. Advertisers and even consumers rejected that video form, and have come back to their core. And when you work outwards from the core, you're looking at quality content, you're looking at engagement as a priority, you're looking at context, you're even in the most entertaining videos in the world, you're looking at some form of credibility and some platform, you're looking at tech, you're looking at everything else that publishers should be providing. So video is not just about the video, it's about a lot more, and I think publishers are getting it right now.
Okay, no, very interesting. Where publishers and platforms are playing the quantity game, and there's so much content out there, you still feel it's not maybe discoverable enough. So I would love for Ronish to jump in there after maybe Nishant has given his view, because it's probably the future is all about making it discoverable, through tech, to take this content out there. So maybe there is enough content and it has to just be pushed.
I think, yeah. So I think that's what we've been trying to do, is that, if you've created the right kind of content, make sure that it reaches the right audience. For that, you need to understand the audience. One thing is that it depends. If you're a large publisher and you've invested certain amount of money, then for you, a platform like YouTube might not make sense. And SWOT is the only strategy because you've invested so much. Even if you get just 10,000 paid users, that's still better than getting a CPM of, let's say, $2 or a $3. But when it comes to smaller creators and the type of consumption, I think what we're all doing is we're just following the crowd. Right? The day TVF's one of the shows made more money than Splitsvilla, everyone's like, web series is the way to go. That's where the branded content has been falling. Everyone started creating web series. That's why we all feel that there's too much content out there. But if you spread it across the 50 categories, there's a dearth of content. There's a lot of demand, supply is a problem. Take Kannada language, for example. Beauty creators in Kannada language in the last 6 months have clocked over 80 million views. And there are just 3 beauty creators on YouTube, right? So there's a demand, people want to watch it. In Marathi, there are 10 food creators clocking a cumulative of about 300 million views, out of which 2 are mainstream publishers. But 300 million views, 10 creators, people want to watch more content. So it's about identifying that what content people want to watch, and then creating and feeding, and then seeing whether it is there. And when it comes to monetization, I think like what he mentioned is that, brands chase the engagement and all. If they start doing that rigorously, I think life will become easier for all of us. But I still feel advertisers are not there. They are still in a mindset where they want to get reach, they want to get views, they're still focused on CPV. But if they start identifying what content resonates with an audience and start targeting them, maybe even pay a slight premium of 10 to 20% on top of it, they'll start seeing more numbers in terms of ROI, retention and yield. But that's something where I think an awareness needs to be created. Someone needs to come and experiment and see that whether if I've spent $100,000, I've got an X reach, is there an ROI or not? The mechanism to identify that ROI is a problem right now, which I think we guys are also trying to solve. That, how do you measure it? That whether the campaign is success or not. You pay, you get the views, you get the watch time, but whether it's successful or not, you need to dig deep into the matrices. Once we start doing that, I think the problem becomes slightly.
It is interesting that Ramit said that, because he has been that engagement chasing marketer in his previous roles at Zomato and before that
He's
McDonald's.
one of the few among us.
So, yeah, he's been on both sides. Yeah, Ronish, please, about
look, given the fact that I have a tech lens on this, I feel slightly differently. The point that you were trying to ask, essentially, how do we get the right content to right people? And Nishant did mention that when you spread that content across different categories, there is essentially a dearth, which is why I feel that, this space is actually ripe for disruption. Right? And disruption is generally a combination of opportunity and gap. If you look at one of these new age startups called Editor G, they're using a lot of behavioral science and AI and machine learning to essentially try and get the right news to the right audience, because not everyone wants to sort of watch what's being thrown at them, right? While someone might be interested in sports, someone might be interested in just breaking news, and someone might be interested in lifestyle, right? I think from a tech perspective, that's where the focus is going to be. And that's what we're not doing enough today. I mean, there's always a lot of room for us to improve there. And in terms of like the amount of spend that's going to happen, I feel that's going to come from either a new age startup where they're not sort of borne down by monetization or the fact that they have to create new content. Their focus area would be to provide a platform that will become a recommendation engine, right? And that's where I guess it can be a good amalgamation between like a publisher and a tech platform or a cloud platform to get there.
Okay. Now, in the context
I actually find that very interesting, because I think bread and butter for every publisher should be able to recommend the right content to the right person. They shouldn't have to look outside to a tech ecosystem to actually help somebody do that, because if you can't deliver the right video in the right format to the right person, the very basis on which your platform exists becomes questionable, and I just think that we don't see that as part of the basic equation, and that's a problem.
Okay. Before we go to the audience for questions, I think there's time for just one more round of reactions. So my question is, very quickly, in the context of monetization of video content, what are the top 3 ad formats of the future? Are we looking at pre-rolls, mid-rolls, more of native, the whole integration versus ad insertion argument? Where are we? Janpreet, we can start from you.
I think contextual advertising is the future. Okay, if in general I would say that video advertising in the web environment or the digital environment has done a better job of garnering market share from traditional media than display has, for many reasons. One of the biggest reasons has been measurability and contextualization, right? We can have a separate whole topic panel about how we've done an overkill on measurability vis-a-vis a TV, for example, but contextualization is very important. Whether the contextualization comes as pre-rolls, mid-rolls, or it comes as brands becoming co-creators of content. I'm not talking about masking the brand in a video and saying this is content, but it's an ad. I think one very big discovery that most brands are making, at least in our experience as Vice, is that people trust the brands. Whether you are a Levi's or whether you're a Red Bull or you're a Samsung, as examples just randomly, people don't mind being entertained by you. People don't mind being engaged with you on a topic that matters to both you and your audience. So I believe in future you will see advertisers participating in very contextual content creation, engaging content creation, and whether it comes as pre-roll, mid-rolls, native, in product, in concept, that's the journey of the advertiser.
That's well summed up. Yeah. What about you, Ramit? Formats of the future.
Pre-rolls only work if there's real scale. Otherwise, pre-rolls is overrated. I think contextual advertising is very key. There simply isn't enough advertising available which is vernacular in its character, and if it was, I can tell you vernacular content would be at a premium. Even today it is. We run a multi-channel video network with vernacular content which does a couple of billion views in a month, and I often wonder why the advertising that we get for it is not vernacular in its nature. So context is very big. I think contextual advertising will be very big. I think co-creation and branded content, because video by its very nature only works if it engages you or interests you, and because it is an investment in time. So that is going to be a big part of what we do. And I'm going to take the third one and go a few steps further into the future. And I'm going to remind us all that video is where the market for subscription really is getting created even as we speak. Not text, not photo. And even if you look at television, video went behind some kind of paywall all over the world far before anything else did. So my sense is that video for most people will go behind some kind of a paywall in the future. It'll need to.
Interesting. Okay.
So I think, yeah, pretty much summed up. Like I said, pre-rolls need scale. Contextual, native, brand placements and all are going to be at scale. One thing which we've tried with a couple of our brand partners, which works is, I think in the future, the angle of e-commerce to the entire influencer video marketing could be a place where a disruption can come in. Okay. But for that, I think the Indian influencer ecosystem is pretty early right now, pretty much a scam right now. Every jobless person with about 10,000 Instagram followers calls themselves an influencer, right? So I think once we have better...
That's judgmental.
we've worked with a lot of influencers, right? What people need to do is understand what their followers want, where can they actually make an impact, do certain campaigns and see the ROI. So I think once that happens with some of the influencers, we've seen that even with the 5,000 follower base, they've been able to do about 200 to 500 transactions on an e-commerce website. So I think once that comes in with the e-commerce ecosystem, that could be a good monetization.
Okay.
I mean, I'll quickly sort of sum it up because I think you all have sort of covered it. Sure. And I'm looking at it from a slightly more neutral perspective. I think, like all of you mentioned, context is very important, and I can take an example on that. A lot of us definitely do watch cricket, and we've been watching cricket on the television. And after every over, you're just used to watching ads, right? Now, when you do the same thing on a digital platform, either Hotstar or Sony Live, now users are actually absolutely fine watching those ads, which is, in this particular case, sort of a mid-roll. Right? They're absolutely fine watching those ads. They don't complain about the fact that even if it's a premium stream, why am I seeing ads? On the other side, if you change the context and it's like a 2-minute or a 3-minute clip or a video, they're okay with pre-rolls, but they're not okay with mid-rolls. They're like, I don't want to see that. I want continuation in terms of what I'm watching. So context is very important in terms of how you want to sort of engage with the audience.
Okay, great. That's very well summed up. A perfect time to go to the audience for a few crisp questions. We have a hand there.
Hi, my name is Nandini. I wanted to get some insights on the content length, because there is, you have this short 2-minute videos. The people say they don't have the attention span, but at the same time there are more descriptive, 10-minute videos. So what would your recommendation be from a content length perspective for different platforms?
I'll take it from a content creator's experience point of view, and probably you can take it from at Vice, we are a content-first company, and one of the biggest learnings for us across the 43 countries that we've been operating, including India, has been it's story first, it's idea first. If an idea is best told in 30 seconds, it's okay, and if it's best told in 20 minutes, that works well too. As we started, Vice News launched almost 13 years ago with the launch of YouTube, and then Vice has got 12 different brands, right, on YouTube. And most people would tell us food 5 to 7 minutes. Our best performing videos for Munchies has been 22 minutes sometimes, right? Many platforms come to us and say we want at least, when we work with OTT platforms, we need at least 22 minutes, and we just come back and say this story has nothing to say more than 10 minutes. There is nothing I can say, right? So please, I would just say, share as a content creator, please be true to your story. And the other angle to it is what our experience is, that it is true that every platform has a different intent of consumption. I go to a social media platform for a very different purpose vis-a-vis an OTT platform at a different time of the day, at a different, with a different perspective or objective. So that science, of course, which, all our panelists are, very engaged in as well, that's very important. But as content creators, we're just true to the story, not to the length of the time.